Locked and loaded. These are the three words that have just pushed the Middle East to the absolute edge of a major conflict. In a move that has stunned geopolitical analysts across the world, President Donald Trump has effectively placed a gun on the table and told the Iranian regime, if you pull the trigger on your people, we will pull the trigger on you. Hello everyone, and welcome to International Affairs. We are covering a developing story that is moving at lightning speed. What we are witnessing right now in Iran is not just another wave of protests, it is a fundamental destabilization of the Islamic Republic, and for the first time, the United States has signaled a direct kinetic intent to intervene. Today, we are going to analyze the locked and loaded ultimatum. What does it actually mean in military terms? Why has the Iranian economy suddenly collapsed into free fall in the last 48 hours? And most importantly, if the United States decides to rescue the protesters, as Trump claimed, are we looking at a new war in West Asia? Let's dive deep. To understand the gravity of this situation, we first need to look at the statement that started it all. Late last night, President Trump posted a message that was devoid of any diplomatic ambiguity. He stated quite clearly that if the Iranian regime shoots and violently kills peaceful protesters, the United States will come to their rescue. He ended this warning with the phrase, "We are locked and loaded and ready to go." Now, pause for a second. We need to analyze this specific terminology. In geopolitical signaling, words matter. Locked and loaded is not a political slogan. It is a specific military condition. It implies that the preparations are already complete. It implies that the carrier strike groups are in position, the target packages have been selected, and the only thing missing is the final order to execute. Usually, presidents use phrases like, "all options are on the table," or "we are monitoring the situation closely." Those are passive threats. Locked and loaded is an active threat. It tells the supreme leader of Iran that the safety mechanism on the American military machine has been disengaged. But why now? What triggered this sudden escalation? The mainstream media is focusing on the tweet, but as students of international relations, we need to focus on the ground reality in Tehran. The catalyst for this entire crisis is economic. Over the last 3 days, the Iranian Rial has suffered a catastrophic collapse. We are seeing reports that the currency has depreciated to levels that make basic trade impossible. This hyperinflation didn't just annoy the public, it broke the back of the Bazaris. For those who follow Iranian history, you know the importance of the Bazaar merchants. In 1979, it was the Bazaris who funded the revolution that brought the mullahs to power. When the Bazaar shuts its doors, which happened yesterday in Tehran and Tabriz, it is a signal that the regime has lost its financial lifeline. This economic panic immediately spilled onto the streets. But unlike 2022, where the protests were largely about social freedoms, these protests are about survival. People are hungry, and when people are hungry, they lose their fear of the state. Reports coming out of Iran today confirm that the situation has turned violent. We have verified footage from Lurestan and Shiraz showing security forces, specifically the Bazaar paramilitary units, deploying heavy weaponry against unarmed crowds. We have confirmed reports of at least 7 casualties so far. This is the custom that President Trump referred to. He knows that the Iranian regime's standard playbook is to shut down the internet and open fire. In 2019, during the Bloody November protests, Reuters reported that 1,500 people were killed. Trump's warning is essentially a red line drawn in the sand to prevent a repeat of that massacre. But here is where the deep analysis comes in. Is this a trap? Think about the strategic dilemma the Iranian regime faces right now. It's a classic catch-22. If the regime does not shoot, the protests will grow. If the security forces hesitate because they are afraid of an American airstrike, the protesters will sense that weakness. They will storm government buildings, police stations, and potentially the compounds of the IRGC. History tells us that once a dictatorship loses the will to shoot, it falls within days. However, if the regime does shoot, if they commit a massacre to clear the streets, they hand President Trump the justification he needs to launch a military operation. He has already framed it as a rescue mission. If U.S. Tomahawk missiles start flying into IRGC bases, the Iranian government could collapse from the external pressure combined with the internal uprising. So, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is currently stuck between a revolution at home and a war with the superpower abroad. Now, let's look at the reaction from Tehran, because this tells us how scared they really are. Almost immediately after the locked and loaded statement, we heard from Ali Larijani, a senior advisor to the supreme leader. His response was very calculated. He warned that any U.S. intervention would be a red line and would lead to chaos across the region. Larijani is smart. He is trying to shift the narrative. By threatening chaos, he is signaling to the global energy markets. He is subtly threatening the Strait of Hormuz. He is saying, if you attack us, we will burn the oil fields, we will mine the Persian Gulf, and we will take the global economy down with us. This is why we need to watch the oil prices when the markets open on Monday. If the price of Brent crude spikes, it means the financial world believes that a kinetic war is imminent. We also have to consider the Israel factor. We cannot view U.S. policy in a vacuum. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been coordinating very closely with the White House. Just recently, we saw joint exercises and intelligence sharing. It is highly probable that this locked and loaded stance is a coordinated pincer movement. Israel applies pressure on the nuclear front, the U.S. applies pressure on the political front, and sanctions apply pressure on the economic front. So what happens in the next 48 hours? This is the critical window. The Iranian leadership is currently in emergency sessions. They have to decide whether to call Trump's bluff. If the death toll in Iran rises significantly by tomorrow, we will see if the U.S. president is serious. Locked and loaded is a phrase you cannot walk back from easily. If a massacre happens and the U.S. does nothing, American deterrence in the region evaporates. Trump knows this. His entire foreign policy brand is built on strength. He cannot afford to look weak after issuing such a specific ultimatum. Therefore, the probability of U.S. military action, likely in the form of targeted airstrikes on besieged command centers or IRGC infrastructure, is higher today than it has been at any point in the last decade. The people of Iran are watching the skies, and the regime is watching the water, looking for the movement of the U.S. Fifth Fleet. We are witnessing a high-stakes geopolitical poker game, and unfortunately, the chips on the table are human lives. I will continue to track the naval movements in the Persian Gulf and the situation on the streets of Tehran. As soon as there is a major development or a confirmed engagement, I will bring that analysis to you. Thank you for watching International Affairs.